Hey peeps, so you guys are going to be starting this thing called Rigorous Curriculum Design this week, called RCD. You've been doing it for 2 years, and it still happens in 5th grade, and we're starting Unit 1 officially this week. So I wanted to pop on here and tell you a little bit more about it. So an overview of what we're doing for Unit 1 in 5th grade. So let's pretend, hypothetically, that you've owned a bookstore in Cherokee County for the last 10 years. So I guess you've owned it since you were born or like an infant. Not really sure. Let's just imagine here. Let's imagine here that you are like my age, or Miss Covington's age, or Miss Smith's age, or Miss Millwood's age, or Miss Moore's age. Whoever your teacher is, their age. You've owned it for 10 years, and recently you've noticed a decrease in sales of children's books due to the lack of interest. As a result, you've created a special kids reading area to showcase the variety of books available to them, but so far, business has not increased. So, to attract young readers, you've decided to have a grand reopening day. And your task for this unit is to plan the activities for the special reading event. So, I'm only going to tell you about Task 1 today. There are 4 tasks total, and they build on each other. So this first task might be pretty easy for some people, might challenge some other people, but the tasks build on each other. So it's very important that you finish the first one before you move on to the second one, and the second one before the third one, and vice versa. The key thing is just to not get behind on these. So if you pay attention to your teacher, then you should be able to move along just fine. Your first task, though, is pretty fun. So one of your first tasks is to design, or I guess redesign, your bookstore that you have had since you were an infant for the grand reopening. And you need to make sure that you include all of the following genres in your bookstore layout. So poetry, biography, autobiography, informational, realistic fiction, historical fiction, science fiction, fantasy, folktale, and mystery. If your teacher tells you a different amount of genres, then you should follow that, but that's what I tell my students to do. You need to also explain what each genre is on the back of your layout so the patrons of your bookstore know what each section entails. And just as a reminder, you should have already learned this, but in case you haven't, a genre is literature that's defined by characteristics. So basically, how text is organized within certain categories. And here's an example from a student from a previous year. You might know who this person is just based off of maybe what they look like from this crop photo. But I didn't zoom in super close on their example because I didn't want you to copy every single thing, but I wanted you to see what you were going to be writing your example on. Even if you are a digital student, you should be writing your bookstore, or I guess drawing your bookstore on a piece of paper, because if you're digital, you're going to be sharing your bookstore on Flipgrid. If you are an in-person student, like if you go to the school building and your teacher teaches you in person, you still might do a Flipgrid, but you might not. Either way, you should be doing your bookstore on a piece of paper. And if you can see here, this student did all of their genres on the front and explained them on the front. That's okay, but if you're out of room, you can always write them on the back, because if you're doing it on a Flipgrid, then you can flip it over and talk about it there, but they have to all be labeled. And a special note, this student wrote other little things, like right there, that's a food court, and they have like a rainbow slide going to each section. You should definitely get creative with this assignment. Here's the rubric that you're going to be graded on. If you're an in-person student, meaning that you go to the school building to learn every day, you are probably going to do something called a book tasting. If you're digital, we're going to do that in a different way. You're still going to be graded for a book tasting. We're going to talk more about that later this week. But your bookstore labeling, that's what I was talking about in the previous slides, like the student example. So you need to include a title for each genre on the layout diagram, and it includes the characteristics for each genre on the layout diagram. Now notice that you're not being graded on how beautiful it is. You're not being graded on how colorful it is, or if yours has a food court, but it is more enjoyable for your classmates and for your teacher to look at your assignment if it's more visually appealing. And like I was just saying, you're more than welcome to get creative with this assignment, but make sure you have the things on the rubric that your teacher will be looking for. With all of that being said, if you have any questions about what your assignment is going forward, feel free to refer back to this video or this PowerPoint and ask your teacher for help. That's what we're here for. This assignment for my digital learners will be due on Friday. If you're an in-person teacher, you need to ask them directly. Good luck, everyone.